Hey YouTube, what's going on? Today we're doing something a little different. We're talking world athletics, track and field, my favorite thing in the world to watch. It's been a great season for track and field fans. We got a ton of great Diamond League meets. We had a really good indoor season. We had an Olympics. It was a great Olympics. A lot of stars, a lot of hype, new stars, old stars coming into their own again. Just wonderful, wonderful moments. Specifically, as you saw from the title, we're talking about one thing in particular, Femke Bowl. I'm a big advocate for Femke Bowl. I think she's great for track and field. I love her. I'm a very big fan of her. Fully aware that she's not the best in the world at the 400-meter hurdles. But she is my favorite. And she's a lot of people's favorite for a lot of reasons. So what we're going to talk about today is her recent Diamond League win, where she once again set a meet record. I believe it's her 4th one in a row for that. Her 19th Diamond League win in a row. She made a lot of money this season. She showed up to a lot of meets, did a lot of good. And yet, when I go to see the article and share my joy with my fellow fans and celebrate this great athlete and her accomplishments, I got to make it through about 19 negative comments that look like they're a positive comment for Cindy McLaughlin-Levrone, but they're really just a dig at Femke Bowl. Shocking, shocking, it's Americans doing this posting. And this is where my country, man, we got to do better with this crap. We are the worst at social media. Social media has made my country a worse place, or it has allowed the worst aspects of my country to come to light and spotlight. It's horrible. Cindy McLaughlin-Levrone is great for track and field. She is amazing. Watching her run is a treat. And I mean that in every way that word applies. She's the best who's ever done it. She's one of only 2 women to ever break 51 seconds in the 400-meter hurdles. She's now, I think, broken the world record her last 4 consecutive times that she's run the race, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe 3. She is world champion. She is Olympic champion. She is 2-time Olympic champion. I think she's the only woman to ever 2-time Olympic champion at that. So she's already going to go down in history as the greatest 400-meter hurdler who ever lived. Having said that, her fans are horrible, horrible people. Because they're not interested in celebrating Sydney as much as they are knocking other people down who want to celebrate other people. Let me explain to those of you who are not track and field fans why you can be a fan of someone who isn't the world record holder in a thing. Track and field is a long season. There's an indoor season, there's an outdoor season. There's a lot of track meets. World athletics does depend on revenue for live events. You can't really afford to put on a track meet and have a track meet if people don't show up and watch it. If the best people don't go and compete, the likelihood that you're going to sell tickets reduces. Nobody wants to go see average performances. You're going to have a much smaller crowd. So it's important that things like Diamond League exist because it incentivizes the best athletes in the world to come out and compete. With that, you're often now competing against some of the best in the world more frequently than you would have in the past. It would have been more sporadic. As a result of that, more stars have been able to emerge and more people have been able to elevate themselves and perform better than they ever have by competing with the best more often. Greatness breeds greatness. With coverage on things like Peacock, we now can have the accessibility to those track meets we used to not be able to get. You used to have to watch it on like ESPN The Ocho and hope you got like an hour of Otto Bolden talking about Allyson Felix. And that was all you could ever hope for. And if Allyson Felix wasn't in the race, they weren't going to show it. I love my Peacock coverage. I watch them all the time. I love how they break it down. I love how they stream it. Love how they do it. Different announced teams. It's great. I've loved the coverage of track and field this year. And over the past couple of years, probably since Tokyo, the thing that's blown me away is that every track meet I have seen, and I've seen all of them, Femke Bowl is running. I don't think there's another track and field athlete who's been in every single damn meet, indoor and outdoor, than Femke Bol. I mentioned there were only 2 women who have ever broken 51 seconds. Take a wild guess who the second one is. Femke Bol. Her PR is only 0.6 seconds behind Sydney's world record. Less than a second. Only a little bit more than half a second. In the 400 meter hurdles, that is not a big margin at all. So she is fully capable of achieving a time that would compete or best Sydney McLaughlin-Levrone at present. Do I think that that gap is going to continue to widen? Yes. But there's an advantage that Femke Bol has. Sydney only competes 2 or 3 times a year, if that. So it gives you a lot of opportunity to break her record, because she ain't up in it all the time like Mondo Duplantis. So I think a lot of people like watching her chase the record and seeing if she can do it. It's an exciting time for women's track and field because you have a lot of these great stars chasing these records. A lot of Flojo's records are being talked about dropping. And even the women's 400, which, you know, has the same doping scandal theories that Flojo has, a little bit more concrete with the 400. But the German runner from 1986? Anyway, her world record in the 400 is at jeopardy. But the 400 meter hurdles is the most interesting women's race right now, I think, in terms of the sprints, because you have 2 women who have run sub 51 competing at the same time, but never together, because Sydney doesn't run. And when she does run, she runs other things. She's cross-training herself. She's specializing. And you can do that in track and field, and that's fine. But that brings me back to fans of track and field. If your favorite person only runs the race you want to watch once a year, once every other year, it's kind of hard to be a fan of the event because you never see your favorite person. If you're a ticket buyer, you know you're not going to see the world record holder run that race, so there's not a lot of incentive for you to dial into your race because you're not watching the best. But then you get somebody like Femke Bol, who's chasing the best and is right there knocking on the door, and you're like, oh, this is exciting. I want to watch her run. And so you buy tickets and you go and watch and hope you're going to see a thing. Femke's a world record holder. She broke the indoor world record in the 400, so she holds a world record. She's often led the Netherlands to top 3 finishes in the 400 legs of relays. She's a very competitive person. She likes to run a lot of races in a track meet. She likes to run a lot in a season. That's great. But when you run a lot of races, some are going to be great, some are going to be good, and some are going to suck. When you run 2 or 3 and you're very selective and you're very, very precise to only run when you're peaking, as long as you don't hurt yourself, you tend to only punch out great after great after great, and that sort of gives you this infallibility, this sort of unbeatable mystique. And you need mystique athletes in track and field, you know. It's like the Great White Buffalo. It's like Sydney's running the 400 hurdles, the Great White Buffalo. I better do it now because I might be a retiree the next time she runs it. Like, that's fine. That mystique means that you're going to tune into that track meet because it's a rarity. You didn't watch her run last week. You didn't watch her run this year. So that's a big deal. And that's cool. But you can't build world athletics on those people because if they all did that, nobody would ever watch. Because you never see the best. The only people would watch is the Olympics, and world athletics as an enterprise would fail. They wouldn't be able to afford to have track meets. They wouldn't be able to put on track meets, and so track athletes wouldn't have as many opportunities to run, earn money, or hone their skill, and performances would dwindle. The reason so many records are breaking now is because there's so much more opportunity for track athletes to compete at a high level, and they're getting better. That's part of why it's important to the sport that when you commit to an appearance, you go. One problem I have with Sydney McLaughlin-Levrone is she does tend to drop out of a lot of commitments. She does sign up for a race thinking, I am going to go do this. They advertise it. They sell tickets on it. They put her face on a poster and say she'll be here, and then she doesn't show up at the last minute. That's her training thing, and that's fine. And contractually, she's not obligated to show. But it does suck for a lot of the fans. And so a lot of European fans have a little bit of a bitter taste in their mouth about her and don't support her publicly because she lets them down. She doesn't show up. And so that's fair, but they don't post hate about Sydney. They just don't focus on her. They focus on Femke, because she's there and taking pictures and smiling and waving. And people like that about her. They can't like that about Sydney because she ain't there. That's fair. But without fail, if you spotlight another 400-meter hurdler, somebody's going to throw a Sydney comment in and be like, "Oh, you're not Sydney running." Well, you know, why do that? Let these other people get their flowers. This post isn't about Sydney. Let Sydney have Sydney's posts, and let these ladies have their posts. All of us are just there to talk about how much we like this particular athlete, and we're supporting that athlete and world athletics. We don't need you coming in and wrecking the post, and then when we turn around and tell you to go shove it, you're like, "Well, I don't know why you're yelling at me. You're complaining. I mean, I'm just celebrating the best in the world." This wasn't even about you. You were not in this conversation. We're over here talking about this person, and you come over here with a completely different piece of information to yuck our yum, and now you're complaining that we're complaining? What is wrong with you? Go away. No one wanted you here. So this is the thing that my country does terribly, is we think, I have a thought, and then I'm going to go post that thought, and then somebody says, "We didn't ask for your thought," and then the person who posted the thought attacks the people who are replying and plays a victim, and it's like, "Oh, you're just a bunch of babies over here." You came to our post. Nobody invited you. You're not even on topic. Go away. So this is kind of where I think a lot of the hate is coming from. A lot of these Sydney fans, they're not coming in because they're promoting Sydney Le Goff and Maroney. They're saying, "Oh, you think Femke Bowles good? Well, you're wrong. Let me show you how right I am and how wrong you are." The I'mRight.com crew, my favorite Americans. Because most people in Europe don't do this. Jamaica and the Bahamas a little bit. It's really bad. And Femke's 52 point was not a great time. But it got the job done. So, people are giving her a high five for winning, again, breaking a record, again. And there's nothing wrong with that. It still broke a meet record. That means, up until that moment, nobody had done it faster than that. Which goes to show you how non-competitive this event has been for a while. That's why it's so great that she runs all these races and is getting these times to more approachable times, to closer to what the world records need to be. It's updating a lot of these meet records, and I think that's great. So why do you have to come over here and yuck everybody's yum? Don't do that. You know, if somebody wants to celebrate Tobago, don't talk about Noah Lyles. If somebody wants to talk about Dean Asher-Smith, don't comment about Sha'Carri Richardson. We're not talking about them. NBC does that enough. You know, like, and I've said this a lot. I love NBC. I love their coverage. But their storytelling sucks. They get their favorites, and it doesn't suck. It's actually very important to the sport to get the common viewer invested in one person. Somebody that you can really understand of. Think of one name when you think of the sport. They're actually starting to diversify. Now there's like 2 or 3 they focus on. And they're worthy people, you know. People understand who, you know, Gabby Thomas is, that she went to Harvard. And you know, people understand who Sha'Carri Richardson is. She's flamboyant. People understand who Noah Lyles is. You don't shut up. You know, like, they're building characters to bring in the casual viewer. That's their job. And they do a good job with it. I just got very sick and tired of it during the Allison Felix era because I was like, please mention anyone else's name. I remember the day that Allison Felix retired. I was so happy because I was like, yay, we're going to talk about other athletes now. And without fail. And joining us in the booth today is Allison Felix. And I was like, no, not again. God, anybody else, please. There are over 100 people on this team. Talk about somebody else. So I get a little grumpy about that. But the truth is, NBC does do a great job of getting the average person invested. And in my country, it's very easy to get the average person invested. Number 1, find a pretty good athlete. Number 2, find a supermodel. And number 3, tell me about anything other than their track and field. And that seems to get people invested. I don't know why. The fact that Gabby Thomas went to Harvard does not impact her ability to run the 200 meters. But that's all they talk about with this girl at the Olympics. and her biology background. And it's like, that's not relevant to the race. I don't get it, but it seems to resonate with common fans. You know, Anna Hall was not expected to do well in the Olympics at all following her surgery. Drop dead gorgeous, great athlete when she's healthy, but we knew she wasn't healthy going in. But there were all these vignettes about her, and they didn't really show a lot of the heptathlon, but more people knew who Anna Hall was than Cole Hocker, like, you know, who won a gold medal. Like, I don't really get some of their focal points. I guess they developed these packages before the Olympics or whatnot, but it always seems like they really dwell on the attractive people. And let's call a spade a spade. Sydney McLaughlin-Ravoni is drop dead gorgeous. Femke Bowles cute, you know, but she's just a normal person. I mean, she's incredibly well fit, you know, she's shaped, she's got abs, you know, but, you know, is she going to be on Vogue anytime soon? Probably not. You know, she looks like a normal person, you know. And I think on some level, people, you know, I've gone out of their way to say, like, well, Femke Bowles, like, not attractive, and it's like, I don't really see how that's relevant to her running. I don't think she's unattractive. It's hard to call yourself good looking and not the funny one when you're standing next to fucking Clover, who is, you know, a supermodel on the Netherlands team, and they always seem to photograph her standing next to her. That I get, but why is that relevant on any level? She's lovely. She smiles. She's, you know, they're like, oh, well, her teeth aren't sparkling white. They're normal colored teeth. Like this? That's called normal human being. She's allowed to be a normal looking person because she's an above average athlete. She's an exceptional athlete. Top 1%. So who gives a crap? Why do I constantly have to hear about the good looking? Like, this is an American thing. The Europeans don't focus on this at all. You watch the coverage, they never talk about how good-looking people are. They don't spotlight the good-looking people. It's not what they're looking for. Only America does that. And I don't know what that's about. But it's always been our MO. So I think there is a little bit of that, too, where the Femke fans and the Sydney fans, they're a little bit like, oh, well, you know, she gets all this coverage because she's good-looking. Well, that's part of it, but she's also the world record holder. You know, the coverage is deserved. The third thing is, and this is just how they do interviews, Sydney is polite, she is professional, she's economic with her speech, she's not egotistical at all. So why would so many people have a problem with Sydney if, you know, she's this great, professional, well-spoken, respectful, humble person? In interviews, the religion. Sydney is extremely vocal about her Christianity, which is not uncommon for a Lewis Johnson athlete. If you know about that, you know about that. But, okay. If you believe in a God, any God, and that makes you train harder, believe in yourself a little bit more, or pushes you to perform that much better, mazel tov, do it. Great. There's nothing wrong with getting in an interview and saying, my belief helped me be better. I think a lot of people would do well to adopt something in their life that pushes them. I don't think religion is the thing for everybody to do that with, but if it works for you, great. A lot of people like to use religion as a scapegoat in interviews. That bothers me. Sydney has never done that. She's never once said, I lost because God told me to lose. God planned for me to lose. I don't hear that scapegoat a lot. I'd never heard it from her, but I'm hearing it less and less in track and field, which is great. Still very common in boxing. That still bugs me. But I think a lot of hate towards Sydney fans comes because a lot of Christians like to take their pro-Christian athletes and use it to sort of push their own agendas into social media, and that makes a lot of people resent the athlete that they're using to do that with, when in reality the athlete has nothing to do with that. Sydney's religion is her own thing. She's never publicly come forward and spoken on her sect of Christianity, but if you know what it is, then you can kind of guess why she's the way she is. But she doesn't do that. Her fans do that, but she doesn't. And I think that is also part of this Femke Bowles Sydney thing. Femke never once brings up a religion. She only talks about her training, her coach, and when she F's up, she owns it. That's the other thing that a lot of people really like about Femke Bol. When she lost to Sydney, they said, Femke, what happened? You were expected to possibly win. You got third, and you lost by a lot. What happened? I ran a bad race. You ran a bad race. Yeah, I went out too hard in the first 200. I was trying to keep up with Sydney. I messed my steps. It forced me to 15 and 16 step on the back end, which screwed me up. And I tanked out. Wasn't the way I should have ran that race. That's not how I run the race. I got overexcited. I took a gamble, and I lost. My fault. Really? You don't think that it was the fact that you ran the mixed 4x4 earlier in the Olympics and had that big comeback from behind where you dug too deep? No, didn't bother me. I run a lot. That wasn't it at all. I ran a bad race. And even if I ran my best, I would have been hard-pressed to beat Sydney because she broke the world record again. So don't know that I would have won, but I definitely could have ran better. Be still my heart. Marry me now. Like, are you kidding me? That level of accountability and humble doesn't exist in track and field. So a lot of people gravitated to Femke immediately because they were like, wow, what an amazing athlete to just own that and be fine with it. And Femke's like, on to the next race. F that one up. Can't do anything about it. Next race. Next race, she won a medal. So I think it's really a lot of factors that make people want to praise this athlete. She shows up. She runs a lot. You can see her, you can interact with her, you can count on that excitement in a track meet, so it makes you want to go see it live or tune in. She's reliable, she's accountable, and she is one of the best, and she's the second best to ever do it. And she's alive at the time that the first best is. It's kind of like Rai Benjamin and Warholm. They're at the same time. So there's that great, great, great aspect to her. But that doesn't mean everyone's saying that she's the best. They're saying they like her the best, and that's fine. You can like the worst person in the world at it. But stop throwing the fact that Sydney. 99.999% of all people who do an athletic activity are not the best who ever did it. You do not need to remind them that that other person exists every time they achieve something. That's really obnoxious. You know, if Sam Kendricks jumps 601 or 602, he gets a high five. You do not have to bring up Mondo Duplantis. It's not relevant. Let people who achieve a thing get their flowers. And if they're not bringing up Sydney, and you're a Sydney person, you don't need to come into this conversation unless you want to congratulate Femke Bol. Otherwise, go away. We'll call you in 2 years when Sydney runs again. We don't need you. Don't be that person. You know? You don't have to be the world record holder to be the best who ever did it either. I think that's a misconception as well. You know, people always like to use the word GOAT, the greatest of all time. Well, the world record is not a requisite to be the GOAT. It helps. But even if you got the world record, that doesn't make you the GOAT. I think the greatest sprinter of all time is Shelly Ann Fraser-Price. I don't think anybody can have a resume that equates her resume in terms of total championships, total times under a certain benchmark, total qualifyings. Does she have the world record? No. But I still say she's the greatest sprinter to ever do it. Men or women. Some people might say Carl Lewis. Some people might throw out Usain Bolt. You're not wrong. You have an argument. But you don't have to be the world record holder to be the greatest at something. Greatness comes in a lot of flavors. Stop barking. Comes in a lot of different flavors. And world record is only one of them. So, Sydney McLaughlin, she might be Mr. WrestleMania. Only does, you know, Undertaker. Comes out once a year, wrestles WrestleMania, does great, goes away. But that doesn't make you the person that carries the brand the whole year. You need a Dolph Ziggler too. You know, you need somebody who can show up every single Monday Night Raw and carry the brand for the year. And Femke's one of those people, and she's really good at it. And she can give Sydney a run for her money on her best day. And I think that people should be a little more respectful of that. And you don't have to always dig in with your I'mRight.com comments. It's not necessary. So don't do that. So track and field needs its great white buffaloes who only come out once in a blue moon, do something amazing and go away. That makes that event special. That makes it a tune-in moment. Must-see TV. Track and field needs its flamboyant controversials to draw attention to the sport. Your Noah Lyles, your Sha'Carri Richardsons. They got to be good. More important that they're controversial. And you need your workhorses who show up every meet, do great. You know, the high jump has it right now. The women's high jump has it. You just show up every meet. You do great. You're why people come live to watch. The consistent backbone of track and field in world athletics. So give Femke her credit. Stop throwing Sydney crap everybody's way. Not everybody likes Sydney McLaughlin. Not because of who she is. Maybe some people because of who she is. But a lot of people don't like her because of the way her fans use her. And be respectful of that when commenting on world athletics. Because world athletics is not exactly a guaranteed entity. We need to support it if we want it to stick around. It's in a high point right now. We need to build on that and grow. Let's not let the toxicity of social media bleed into this as well. We've got enough issues with Kevin Durant and Noah going at it on social media. So let the ladies have their moments. We don't need that infighting, all right? It's okay to like Femke without bringing up Sydney. We'll bring up Sydney in a year or so when she runs again. Next week, we're going to talk about Femke again when she runs. So just let it happen, okay? I respect Femke Bol more than I respect Sydney McLaughlin-Varoni because I like her style of competition more. I'm not saying Sydney's is wrong. I'm saying I don't care for it. I like watching Sydney run. I will tune in when she runs. I'll root for her when she runs. But if she's racing Femke, yeah, I'd like to see Femke win because she's put the work in, and I'd like to see that rewarded in the biggest way possible by beating the best in the world, which is Sydney. I'm allowed to have my fans. It's like rooting for the underdog. I like to do that. But none of what I don't like about Sydney is really on her. That's her coaches, her team, and how she chooses to compete. It's hard for me to like someone who's never there. That's all I'm saying. So I prefer this person. I see them all the time. I like Claver too as a 400-meter runner. I like Shamir Little. You know, I like my Vernon Norwoods. I like to watch them run because they're there every single meet, grinding. You know, I don't need the superstar every time. I like to see the good people get better. Claver PR'd like 5 times this season. I'm a big fan of that. I like watching that. As much as I like watching Mondo Duplantis, I like watching EJ jump because I'm a Vitaly Petrov guy. I like EJ. I like watching him compete. I really enjoyed watching the Greek compete. That was amazing. I like watching the long jump. Yeah, I like watching the Greek, but I like to see what McLeod and Pinnock are doing. They're looking great. I like E-Hammer. I want to see what he's doing. I like to see the underdogs claw for the top and get there and make it competitive. That's my favorite part of track and field. Some of us like that, and we're going to celebrate those people doing that. We'll call you guys in a year to make comments again when Sydney runs, or when Noah comes back out to a race, or when Sha'Carri runs again. Then you guys can come back and do your comments about how great they are and how all the people we like suck. Until then, take a nap.